Hi church, and welcome back to our mini-series on the 5 truths about the tithe. Today's truth is this, that the tithe is always whole. And this truth speaks about the temptation that we all face when we look at the multiple needs around us and all around the world, and we want to say, there's so much need, so I will divide my tithe up and spread it around to meet the needs as the Spirit leads me. And this attitude certainly rhymes with the individualistic culture we're in. But here's the problem. Nowhere in the scripture is the tithe ever divided by the giver. It's always given as a whole. Nowhere is the giver given the liberty or the responsibility to divide God's tithe up and decide personally what to do with it, with the bits. In the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 10, God says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Bring the whole tithe into my house. So God, the way God provides food in his house is by those who are planted in the house bringing their whole tithe into the house. Now we'll talk about the storehouse and what that is for us in the next truth installment. But for today, I want us simply to ask this question. Am I giving my tithe whole? Or am I making decisions of where it would be used, personally making decisions of where it would be used? And as I said, this is tempting, especially in our living in a first world country where we can think, well, there's so much money around here already, and there's so many needs in other parts of the world, third world parts of the world. So if I send £100 of my tithe to a missionary in the third world and give another 50 to a cause, and then I'll just give the rest to the storehouse because that's what I think is best. And of course it does make sense in the natural, considering the exchange rate and all that. It does make sense in the natural, but the problem is it's tithing is not a natural principle. It's a spiritual truth and a spiritual principle by which God's house functions and his mission is accomplished. The whole tithe truth teaches us to be wholehearted in our commitment to God's house, which I believe for today is a local church community to which God adds us to as believers, where we bear fruit as we live in Christian community together on a mission. So for today, I want us to reflect on some questions like, is your tithe whole? Or have you divided it up to meet some needs according to your own decisions? Why do you find it difficult to give your whole tithe to one storehouse? Why do you find that difficult to keep your tithe whole? Maybe you don't trust the house to minister to the needs of the world, and etc. Another question is, do you have a wholehearted commitment to a local church community, or are you keeping your options open, attending and consuming everywhere as you feel led? So in summary, the whole tithe truth is this, that the tithe is always whole. You and I do not have God's permission to divide his tithe up. All we need to figure out is to which storehouse will we wholeheartedly commit ourselves to, and then will we bring the whole tithe to that storehouse. And this is how you express wholehearted commitment. And let me just say, I believe living wholeheartedly is the very best way to live. It's an exciting way, it's a risky way, but it's the best way to live. And giving wholeheartedly is also the best way to give. When you give your whole heart, tithe, with your whole heart to God's house where he's planted you, that is radical. And I pray that you'll simply have a revelation of the whole tithe, and that you will joyfully give it wholeheartedly into God's storehouse, from where it will be used by God to be a blessing to the nations. So God bless you. See you next week when we continue with the 4th truth about the tithe.